All right, we're going to call to order the work session for the Cochise County Board of Supervisors. We're meeting in the Supervisors Hearing Room in Melody Lane. Pursuant to ARS 38431.02H, the public will have physical access to the meeting room 15 minutes prior to the start of the meeting. Any item on this agenda is open for discussion. Members of the board may attend in person or via Microsoft Teams. Members of the public may also attend via Microsoft Teams. Work sessions are a time for county staff to inform and discuss agenda items with the Board of Supervisors, and public comments will not be taken. We'll begin with a roll call. District 1.
Crosby is here.
District 2.
Gomez is here.
And District 3, Ann Tenorio is here. All supervisors are present and in person. Today we have Mr. Correa, who's our Chief Civil Deputy and Attorney for the board. He is here to discuss a topic that was brought forward by Mr. Crosby regarding franchise agreements. So that is the topic of discussion today. So Mr. Correa, it's all yours.
All right, thanks. Yeah, this is an item was tabled. It was a franchise agreement for Cactus State Utility Company, LLC. And Supervisor Crosby has, from time to time, talked to me about language that's in our standard franchise agreement. I've whipped up a little memo for you guys. So under the state statute that pertains, the board can, and I think, must enter into franchise agreements if the utility wants to use the public right-of-ways that are, again, incorporated part of the county. The board has broad authority to impose terms and conditions, and that's in the statute that I passed out. So it says a board of supervisors in granting a license or franchise, or any time after it is granted, may impose restrictions and limitations upon the use of the public roads as it deems best fit for the public safety or welfare. And that's ARS 40-283. So under that authority, we have, I've got like paragraph 10 of one of the older franchise agreements. This clause, first it says the county reserves the right to alter or amend the terms of the franchise in any manner necessary to protect the safety or welfare of the public or the public interest. So that echoes the language of the statute. And then it says the reservation includes, but is not limited to, the authority to impose such amended franchise fees, rentals, or use payments, or other form of compensation or assessment as the county may be authorized, now or in the future, to impose under the laws of the state of Arizona and the United States. So Supervisor Crosby has pointed out correctly, there is no authority currently to impose franchise fees. And his opinion is that if franchise fees were imposed, they would be passed on to the consumers in their utility bill, most likely.
Yeah, Econ 101.
Yeah, it's the reasonable economic person, right? It is going to act to make profit, and that's what a corporation does. So I think that's not an unreasonable assumption. And I've proposed a couple of different ways to amend our standard franchise agreement. Yeah, go ahead.
We are the grantors.
The grantors.
They are the grantees.
Yeah, that's right. So, I represent the county
Right.
in this role.
Right.
You, in this role, are the county representatives who would be the ones directing, like, how this contract is formed. So it's really in your purview to direct me, I think, as far as
So correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, you just wanted a provision in there that required the board to re-vote to approve if there were to be a franchise fees. You just didn't want it to be done some kind of a sneaky, underhanded way. You wanted it to be official to where it'd be similar to voting for a tax increase so that the voters knew that by adding...
It is a tax.
No, I got you. I got you. But I mean, you wanted a mechanism to force or to create an ordinance or whatever it was that franchise fees have to be a separate vote approved by the board.
By the people.
Oh, by the people. Okay, you want to go to a ballot vote to approve franchise for like a cable company?
Cable doesn't pay franchise. It has to be a
Or utility.
So when you get, speaking of that, you get in trouble when you have bundles. You have one company providing a variety of services. But we talked about, Paul and I talked about various unknown taxes like impact fees.
Right.
Yeah,
Another favorite of mine.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's no different.
Yeah,
In my opinion, it is a pass-through tax.
Yep.
And in the case of the impact fee, somebody's going to pay that. They're going to pay interest on that for 25 to 30 years because it's going to be on the price of their house that they
Right.
pay. And just like these utility companies, they really don't care. They just want their franchise. The builder really doesn't care. They just want to build. And if it costs them $5,000 or $6,000 to build a house because of the impact fees, they're going to pay it. They're going to pass it on to the customer.
Right.
And the attitude of the city council was something like, they're making all that money. They're making like 100% profit. You know, a builder's making 100% profit on these homes. Why shouldn't we get our slice of the pie too? And when, let's see, I know, it was rent tax. I put something forward to repeal rent tax, okay? And one of the guys, the same guy that says, you know, he looks at it out of a room like this, that they love us. You know, Bob Blanchard, really nice old guy. But anyway, he said, you know, if we eliminate this rent tax, they, meaning the landlord,
Pick up the difference.
they're just going to keep all that extra money.
Right.
And well, whose money is it? It's theirs, you know. And so, and if you want to talk about the school board and what do they call them? School tuition tax credit. You know, what do you have somebody on the public school board? What do you think the school tuition tax credit? And their answer is going to be, that's our money. Okay, when it isn't, because the whole point of having a tax credit is to prevent it from becoming their money or prevent it from the government ever putting their hand on it at all. So all of these are examples of various pass-through tax schemes. And I also talked to Mr. Correa talking about is it a utility tax really a property tax? Because all these utilities are, lo and behold, they're going to a property. And we talk about bed tax. Well, is a bed tax a property tax? All of those beds are on somebody's property, you know, for the hotels and so on and so forth. So, and that is an example, as I pointed out, of taxation without representation. And you can have the opposite thing going on where you are expanding your boundary of something like the what is it? Something or what was Dan Coxworth little thing that he liked so well? Municipal.
MPO?
Yeah, MPO. What's that stand for?
Metropolitan Planning Organization.
Okay, so just because the governor comes up with something with the word must in it, and all of a sudden Sierra Vista draws the boundaries outside the city limits of itself. The city council drew these limits to get the population they needed. Let's say it was like right on the verge of 145,000 or something like that was the limit. Well, we'll just simply make our boundary bigger than the city. Well, you can't do that. It's like you don't represent those people. How do you? They're not voting for you if they're outside the city limits and stuff like that. So everybody does stuff that isn't right, in my opinion, to get whatever money they think is coming in that's their money. And so in this case, it is obviously, for me, it's obvious, even though we're going to get into this definition of a corporation and versus what we on the Board of Supervisors should be. We are not the corporation. We are the people, or we are, both or something like that. But we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that we didn't get voted in by the corporation, I guess. So we definitely represent the people and we protect their interests, which in this case is the potential of a pass-through tax in the future because of the language of the statute. And I don't care what the statute says. If it says it's okay to do that, because it doesn't say you must. Yeah. You don't have to have a franchise fee just because you have a franchise.
So if there were a franchise fee, We don't have any now because
We do not. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
up.
So, but would, if there were a franchise fee, the mechanism for how that would be accounted for would be that the utility pays this fee and then that fee goes to the general fund?
Right. I would imagine it would be something where that you would assess a fee on the utility
Right.
for the purpose of some of these risks that you lay out.
And what,
If we
well,
have to remediate or do something.
right. So what, but is that put into a special fund that covers the,
It would be a special revenue. This.
Right, there is nothing that exists now, so we don't know, but
Yeah.
that sounds,
so,
Sounds-
so, I mean, to Tom's point, right? So it sounds to me that maybe that actually is a more viable thing is to get a voter approved sort of mechanism to say that if you do charge a franchise fee, it has to be specifically identified and segregated, placed in this fund and only used for the sole purpose of mitigating any issues resulting from the, maybe that's,
that sounds sensible, but we're not at that action point.
no, I got you, but in the agreement, if you were to write in there that we reserve the right to refer to the ballot, the potential for a franchise fee, that's.
Kathleen?
Okay.
So like this would kind of like solar farms would be part of this liability too, right?
They are not a franchise.
They're not, so they're not considered.
I hear what you're saying. I think that's something to be considered. They also can leave an uncleaned mess.
Yeah, if there's a fire, you might as well forget it.
So we require bonds for like mining companies, right? They're required to put up bonds. Mr. Crosby.
Yeah.
Colors.
I feel like it was-
You're touching on yet another fee, which is the right-of-way fee.
Right.
Okay. And so would you like to talk about right-of-way fees and compare and contrast a right-of-way fee to a whatever kind of other fee?
Yeah, Supervisor
franchise
Crosby, with all due respect, I'd like to stick to.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I did set out, some of the things that, in the interest of the citizens, I think we should consider to protect against. I mean, risk analysis is what I do, and so I've just outlined some of the things that are risks inherent in allowing somebody to use our right of ways, and that is, there's environmental risks, there's the risk of a company going bankrupt and abandoning things and then not being around to help move or repair as needed. So if we eliminate any kind of language about the franchise fee, we could just leave. I think the simplest solution is just to strike the second sentence in that section 10 that I quoted from and just leave what tracks the statute specifically. And I think that's broad. And it does allow for the county to come back later and say, okay, you're obligated to do these things. So that would leave this sentence. The county reserves the right to alter or amend the terms of the franchise in any manner necessary to protect the safety or welfare of the public or the public interest. That's broad, it's flexible, it's a simple solution to the problem that Tom had pointed out. We could go deeper, and I have some other alternative language to specifically address the risks of environmental liability or obsolete or abandoned infrastructure, safety hazards, that sort of thing. And that's a longer phrase that I.
So we're talking two different processes here, I guess, is
Yeah.
like a return. So the process one is getting the language down for the franchise agreement so that the contract between the county and the franchisee is clear on the terms and conditions of that contract. And then the second part is the board itself. If they are granted the ability to charge franchise fees, what would be the process for implementing a franchise fee?
Would that, I would just, if we were ever granted that ability
Right.
to incur a franchise, wouldn't that could be dictated by that legislation?
Sure, the legislature could specifically say that it requires a certain vote.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't see that as an action item that the board has to address right now.
But I mean, to address Tom's concern is the future board, once this is in place, can then just say by caveat, we have a meeting like this and we just say, okay, yeah, let's add a franchise fee to the cable franchise fee or the power company franchise fee or the cell tower
Yeah.
franchise fee or whatever.
Unfortunately, I think anything that the board enacted in the way of a resolution would be suggestive to a new board because they could write their own
Well, we
resolution.
make an ordinance on it or whatever. I mean, we could require the other future board to undo that before they go. So there is a mechanism to kind of force them to do something more
I'm
public.
not sure I understand. So we don't want like the internet, right? Is that what they, do they have
Like,
franchise?
this is a water franchise, so they're laying,
Yeah, so-
they're laying water pipe.
Okay,
So-
so that's just like water, electricity,
Gas.
gas.
Yes.
Okay. And so when we allow them to come in, a lot of them are sometimes they're monopoly or the APS and some of them cost nobody else, right? And then, so they can increase their fees because they say they have added expenses and pass it on to the user. And that's what you
What
want.
we're talking about is the government.
So the government, you're saying
Taxing.
we don't tax the utility,
Yeah.
and that's what
They're
you want
gonna
to
pass
avoid.
on.
So, but that's,
I got
Without the customers
I
knowing.
got you. So if the board thinks, hey, these big trucks coming in or whatever it may be are using or they're damaging our roads, we're going to charge them to help offset it. Is that what you're talking about? And we want to avoid doing that.
What about trash?
so let's go back to what is the purpose of a franchise agreement at all?
Right. So, yeah, it is to have an orderly, process and an understanding between franchisees that are going to use the rights of way about their obligations and the relationship with the.
Generally, it's just one. You're given exclusive access to one company for access to the right of way.
When they submit their franchise application, they indicate the area that they're serving.
Right.
And so they are, the water provider in that area, for example.
Sewer and trash, utility or.
I don't think so. Well, that's going to be within city limits generally. Am I right?
Operated, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, trash has some kind of fee. They
Yeah,
charge per axle.
Per ton.
Right, but those are generally,
It's like a service fee.
Municipal
Yeah.
services.
Yeah, it's a
Right.
ton.
they don't fall under the franchise.
Yeah, so we just talked about that with Jason, he said that the ADQ just raised the tonnage rate and then, they have a landfill tax that ADQ passes through us onto the garbage companies, just like you were saying. And then they turn around and pass it on to the consumer. So I get exactly what you're saying. So I'm just trying to keep two things separate here. We're given an exclusivity agreement to a particular entity because that way there you don't have four different power lines and four different water lines and four different, because that's what this is. You're granting one entity sole access.
And why would you do that?
Well, there is some practicality to that, like I said, because four natural gas pipelines side by side creates a certain safety problem, right? When you go to dig up your line, you accidentally hit this guy's
So I
line.
mean, as the government, yeah. I mean, in my opinion, the primary reason why you're granting exclusivity or a monopoly is because you are going to tax that monopoly. That's your.
No, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I mean, there is very good temptation to do so, but I'm saying the main reason you're doing it is to provide service to your constituents, and you can't have five different companies digging up all your roads to put fiber optic cable in, or that's.
There's efficiency too.
Well,
You know,
no,
some
I'm
of
just
these-
saying,
Some of these water companies are very small and serve
Yeah.
a pretty small area, so it wouldn't make sense for there to be competition. They wouldn't be able to
right.
justify their operation.
So it's
This
just,
particular one is at Tombstone.
yeah, so it's just, and you're giving them, and they're going to invest a lot of money into putting that infrastructure in, right? So they don't want to have that investment diluted as well. So there's reasons to do that. Now, I get what you're saying, but I'm saying that should be separate, right? Where we do the franchise agreement, say, okay, we're going to give you access to the rights of way. We reserve the right, or maybe we put in here that you have to have an insurance of X dollars, or a bond of X dollars or something like that to protect the population in case they put
Right.
something hazardous or do
But
something.
you don't have to charge them a fee to get that agreement.
No.
And that's what I'm saying. You don't, but if you were to say, okay, after, let's say the legislature comes down and they leave the language vague and they just say, okay, we now authorize counties to charge franchise fees. I guarantee you there will be cities and counties running for
Jumping
the, yeah, to do it, because I saw what happened when impact fees
Mm.
went into effect. Everybody dove on impact fees. So to his point, if that were to occur, what I'm getting at is what mechanism can we put in, and it wouldn't be in the franchise.
No, I think
it would be a
it's separate
separate
resolution. Mhm.
a separate resolution with an ordinance or something that would require a formal,
Ballot?
yeah, something by the board, that the board, in this case, if there's determination that it is necessary to establish a franchise fee, the board must refer to the ballot for a vote.
Now,
That's separate.
does that hold up if the next board unanimously votes to get rid of the resolution?
Yeah.
No, so it's set.
Or it would require the board.
For you.
Be here forever.
It would require, or it would
It's not.
require,
Copyright laws.
Not the next board.
or,
For you,
yeah,
as long as you don't
or,
repeal it yourself.
or Kathleen, it would require the next board to undo that and say,
Yeah.
no, we're going to get rid of, which would bring scrutiny on the
Yeah,
next board if they were to do that, because then they have to deal with the media and the public.
Or if the legislation itself doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, you couldn't impose it on the next board. They can just change
They
it,
can just change it.
but they would have to go through that process of
So
changing.
we're setting a standard, a higher
Right.
standard.
Right. So what I'm saying is there a mechanism where we could set in sort of formal written requirement that if a franchise fee were to be allowed by the legislature, the process for implementing franchise fees in Cochise County requires a public vote. And if a future board wants to undo that, then they would have to go through the public process of undoing that. But we couldn't stop them.
Right.
But we could
But
create.
it will create, like you said, scrutiny, and then we need to tell everyone what a great job they're doing, that we're
Yeah,
just
we-
going to do.
Yeah, the previous board was going to let the people decide on this, but now we are going to undo that and say, no, we're going to take that away. That would give them the pressure, the scrutiny to maybe not do that.
Right. Because then they'll just turn around and this is what you're saying, they'll just pass it on to
Right.
increase the fees for the consumer.
Mr. Kraus.
Mr. Correa, you were talking about striking a sentence, and I have this memo and I have this ARS section.
Oh.
List where,
So section 10 is right at the top, paragraph 10, at the top of the memo.
okay,
And I bolded the sentence that I propose we strike.
okay, so I could read it and try to figure it out, but does striking that bolded part preclude addition of fees without a vote of ratepayers?
It just takes the franchise fee out of the franchise agreement altogether.
Yeah, but it doesn't. It takes the word franchise fee out of it. Does it take the franchise fee out? Does it preclude? Does striking this preclude the fees?
No,
That's what the resolution.
that's what I'm saying. You can't do that in the franchise agreement. That's what I was trying to say. In the this is just a contract between
Okay. I understand.
Yeah.
So simply striking this bolded part does not satisfy me.
No, the way we
That
satisfy
is the
you
resolution.
is to put a resolution out saying that in the future, should the legislature authorize franchise fees, the board is required to refer it to the service area impacted for a ballot vote to approve the franchise.
Yes.
That's what I'm getting at. So then there would be two separate pieces. So what Paul's trying to do is get this franchise agreement hammered out so that we can give these
That's
guys
fine.
the agreement. And then we, in conjunction with this, need to do a resolution that says if the legislature grants authority to implement franchise fees, rental fees, or whatever in the future, the board is required to determine the service area impacted and refer to the elections department for a ballot referral to have it voted on in the next general election.
Sounds good.
How's that?
Yeah. But wait, there's more.
Oh, wait, there's more.
There's also right-of-way fee. Okay, so I'm just going to give you an example of that. In Sierra Vista, there's 4% charged as a franchise fee on gas. And then there's 1% charged for a right-of-way fee on gas. So really,
Which it's an 8% fee, but which is, fees are supposed to cover cost,
okay,
right?
okay. So let's say,
What cost do they cover?
let's say there's like, I'm just going to make this up, $200,000 a year collected in right-of-way fee for the gas company. Okay. What happens to that money after, and that's to fix the road if they tear up the road to do something with their gas pipes. Okay.
Right.
So what happens to that money if they don't do that, and they don't tear up the roads, and
They just put a patch over it.
No,
Oh,
they don't do anything to it.
oh.
There's no expense incurred by the gas company to fix roads or do anything having to do with maintenance. What happens to that $200,000?
No, I get your
Give
point.
it back to the
No,
taxpayer.
no,
No, the city.
No, I get your point. I mean, I get, I'm trying to figure the mechanism to satisfy that point. I mean, I remember this
They
lawsuit.
just gotta suffer through all those high
I
taxes.
remember the lawsuit because when we were doing the big budget crisis thing, the governor started implementing fees to try to offset the budget deficit. We got sued by the Goldwater Institute and ATRA and all these other
That's really a tax.
That's right. And the Supreme Court ruled on the definitions of what a tax is, what a fee is. Fees were supposed to cover a reimbursable cost, right? So if the county had to go fix the road, it costs this much to fix the road, the fee should be put towards the cost of fixing that road so that the company that did that didn't create an undue burden on the taxpayer. They had to absorb that cost. That was a fee. But a tax was a generic thing that went to a broad use, a general fund or some other purpose, and it could be used for anything, right? And that's what the governor was doing. She was using these fees for other things. She was just trying to generate revenue. She lost that lawsuit. The Supreme Court said, no, and it went on again when they did the vehicle license fee that blew up in the legislature's face when they said, oh, we're to cover DPS's cost, right? They raised the license fee to pay for DPS, and they called it a fee, but it was actually a tax. So they had to undo that, right? Because fees are, in my opinion, defined specifically for recovering costs not seen as a general service by the county. So if it's not a general service and we have to pay for this, then we should be reimbursed for that so the taxpayers don't have to foot the bill. But to your point, Econ 101, no matter what,
Right.
it's going to circle back
To the consumer.
to the consumer. It does every time.
Okay. So
But I agree with making it harder to just caveat it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
but back to Mr.
okay.
Correa trying to get this franchise agreement done. He's looking for us if we're cool with this language.
Striking that?
Yeah.
Well, you could just say accept fees someplace, like in paragraph B under this 4283, where it says may impose restrictions, and you could say accept fees or something like that, that type of a language.
Okay.
So
But Paul, not to get you wound up,
that's okay.
but
Peace, harmony. Okay.
would that negate us contractually if that language is in there and then they come back and say, wait a minute, you guys
I
had a
insist on paying taxes.
no. They'll say, wait a minute now. You gave us an agreement and it said with accept fees, so you can't charge us a franchise fee now because the franchise agreement you gave us says no fees.
Yeah, we'd be tying our own hands in regards to that particular
Contract.
franchise agreement. So, and I think that's what Tom actually wants, right?
Too bad. Unless the people vote to be taxed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even then, if the people vote to be taxed, we've tied our
You
hands.
tied your hands for 25
They
years.
won't in the first place, but you wait till that expires, and then 25 years after.
Yeah. So what is the term of it? I missed that.
25
It's
years.
25 years.
Yes,
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I have another profound. So when and this is just for your benefit because
Okay.
you're my sister.
Okay.
Okay, watch out for anthropomorphisms. Anthropomorphisms, like new development should pay for
Oh
itself.
yeah.
Okay, so you're giving this inanimate object new development, the characteristics of a human being of paying for itself. Okay, when it doesn't pay for itself, whoever buys the house pays that. Okay, and similarly, we have the anthropomorphism, traffic calming, like making fewer lanes on the west end of Sierra Vista calms that traffic because we know that people become calm when you prevent them from getting to where they're going at the time period they want to. So
Yeah.
they become calm.
I get it. So,
Watch out.
Yeah.
but for this here, the question is for the three of us. We can't answer the question now.
Yeah.
We'll have to do this at a board. But the question is, do you want to insert into the contract by putting specific language that says accept
franchise fees.
franchise fees. That precludes you from,
Or right-of-way fees. And unless,
Let's not do right away.
Let me ask
That's-
this, when you say,
then what's the difference?
when you start say, tying our hands,
Mhm.
if we do this, we're tying our hands for 25 years. What is the reason you're saying that? What's negative?
So-
about
because it's a
doing
contract.
It's a contract. So I'm saying,
Yes.
So
should we ever, in the realm of possibility, the legislature say, yes, counties, you can now charge a franchise fee, and under these conditions and under this process is how you do a franchise fee. We have a contract in place that says we can't. That overrides, I would adapt.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you go to court with a written contract,
Right,
the
the contract.
contract is.
So
Now
you're
we'd
saying
be able
Yeah.
to, from now, this point forward, to.
But you're saying it's a good thing then to have a franchise fee?
I'm saying
It could be.
it could be.
If the legislature passed a law that said
So-
you're going to collect franchise fees and it's going to go to a bond.
So what you're,
To pay for
What you're
contingencies.
saying is that we're cutting off a stream of money.
regardless of your.
To address an issue that could come up.
If you look at it strictly from a contractual point of view, you're eliminating flexibility
Right.
of the boards or anything, which may be good that you limit that flexibility, but you're eliminating the flexibility should there be a need to impose a fee. You
I'm not
can't-
giving it a value. I'm just making sure you're
Yeah.
aware.
Say electricity company does something and it's disastrous and we're left with, what are we going to do? How are we going to fix the road? How are we going to clean up? We can't, isn't there something in the contract that
You just don't have
allows
to,
us
yes,
to
you,
be able to sue them and say you got
you're still going to have a contract. You're still going to have a franchise. You're not going to have a fee.
Right. So we
Because-
still have ways in which they could fix the situation that they imposed or that they created.
Sure, but suing a bankrupt company, after it's like left town is not the first
You could
position.
take over the land. Couldn't you? You could take over.
They already own the land. So
Well, okay.
the again, back to the contract here. I just want to make sure everybody
Yeah.
gets it. You were going to lock in this particular case, a 25-year contractual agreement with a company that you will not charge a franchise fee,
Ever. No matter what conditions it
no matter what condition, because that's what the contract is. That's the franchise agreement. Now, in the future, the legislature may grant the board authority to charge a franchise fee. So on future franchise agreements or after 25 years, a future board can come back and say, well, now we are going to amend it and add the franchise fee. But you're going to tie this particular company up for 25 years by limiting it, just so you know.
But that's it. So it's basically a positive for them, the company.
Yeah, if I were the company, I'd be like, yeah.
So what you're saying, so how do we deal with something that happens that's detrimental and it's caused by this company? What are our ways?
Well, that's right. I think you put in there that you would require them to have at least some
A
kind
bond
of
or
a
something,
bond.
right?
That's an alternative language.
Yeah.
Well, I would think that if we did it with having a way in which that we,
But they're
They
going to
put
do
up
it,
money
so it's real.
before.
Kathleen, right now they're going to do it anyways because there is no fee to
Mm-hmm.
cover that anyway. So they're going to put it in no matter what. So you're still in the same boat with trying to get money out of them. And if they go bankrupt and abandon it and it goes to hell and it creates a hazard, you're still,
are left with it.
you're still.
But you're not
So-
gonna put, they put a
Yeah.
bond. Is that our way our contracts are now that we have?
That is not. So the last sample combined clause is sort of covers all those contingencies. So it includes the language out of the statute. That's the first sentence. And then it says, upon its sole determination of substantial
Sorry,
risk.
you're in here or?
Yeah, right there.
Okay, right here. Okay.
That last page.
Yep.
Sample combined clause, that's what you're.
Right.
Okay.
So that includes language that says, upon its sole determination of substantial risk of environmental contamination, abandonment of infrastructure, obsolescence, or similar events, the county may require the grantee to post financial assurances, e.g. a bond or letter of credit, sufficient to cover potential removal, remediation, or other associated costs. Additionally, the grantee agrees to indemnify, defend, and hold harmless the county against any liabilities, damages, cleanup, or remediation costs, or other losses related to or arising from grantee's infrastructure or operations. Let me tell you why I like this.
I like it too.
This goes to experience I had alluded to with the state. There was a piece of state land when I was an assistant attorney general that was leased by a factory that did some kind of dirty operation. They decided to move to California, and there was a provision like this that required them to post a bond. And the bond was for the purpose of installing deep injection monitor wells to monitor water contamination and pay for the maintenance of that for 10 years. So the state was able to catch them on their way out and say, okay, under this contract, you've got to post a bond now. And that's our sole determination. And the company had to come up with the money, and they did. So it worked. It won't always work because they can rush to bankruptcy and say, we can't afford it now. But it's at least you've got,
Puts them out of business though.
yeah, and at least you've got your foot in the door.
So they can't jump to another state and go back into business somewhere else.
Right.
See, so that to me makes me feel good, and that there's a way to, if we have that in a contract, then we have some way, at least, of relief if something happens. And then at the same time, say we can't impose any fees. I mean,
So there's no fee imposed until, something changes and,
Right.
The administration or development services recognizes that and, says, we've discovered that this kind of,
Since they're out of
This kind of
business now,
legal
they can't
fees
pass it on.
It said,
Yeah.
there's no fee precluded in this combined clause.
it doesn't say that now.
Right. Is that what you're going to put in there?
No, I think that would more properly be addressed in a resolution.
okay, so
Oh,
this would be what we could do to protect ourselves down the road, and
Right.
then the resolution would be
About the franchise.
I think that's good government.
Okay.
And then draft a separate resolution to satisfy Mr. Crosby's
Yeah,
concerns.
I-
We both
I
to
can-
vote,
Right.
put both of them in front of the board at the same time.
Together. Okay.
But yeah, so with this franchise, the new contract, and we have to go through a posting period. And the clerk of the board does that. We do put a public notice out that there's a franchise agreement to the people in this area that with Cactus State Utility. And so there is a few weeks before this will.
So I will draft an amended version of this particular franchise agreement, and then the board can vote on it then. And I'll include that language,
And
in
then
future
who does
franchises.
the resolution that is in the event that the legislature shall allow a franchise fee to be imposed, the board is required to determine the service area affected and to refer to the county elections director a resolution placed on the ballot to authorize that fee to be imposed, or something along those lines.
Yeah, I'll draft something up and I'll send it to you. It sounds like you have the language in your head, and just let me know if there's any corrections.
I mean, just
And I
standard
just-
boilerplate.
I just want to refer to Laura as clerk of the board because she handles these on a daily basis. Does any of this cause you any concern as far as timelines?
We usually get a signed franchise agreement prior to putting it on the agenda. So I've defer to Paul on that. So is this going to have to come up again
Yeah, they can sign.
twice?
Then we can follow the same process, and then the board will be voting to approve this kind of new form of the franchise agreement.
But we still have to finalize the franchise agreement with a signature, right?
Right. And
Which
then
means we have to
voting.
come back at some time after it's been posted, after it's been reviewed,
Right. So we
and
send
we
it,
come back. So before that happens, we need to have the resolution passed referring it to the ballot if there is a franchise fee. Before that.
We could do it at the same time, but I'll
Or at the same time. But I mean, it can't be like after the fact. So it's got to be up front that that's coming.
So can I just repeat in layman's term what I think, so someone says, what the heck did you do?
Yeah.
Have an answer. Okay, so what we're doing is that we're protecting the county by having this sample client clause that says that anyone coming in that, could have something, like you said, abandonment, all that kind of stuff. We are going to ask them to put up some money so that we can, make sure that county stays intact and that we have a way in which to pay for anything that disasters happen.
Yes.
And at the same time, what we're saying is that any kind of franchise fee, we're going to enter a contract that we are not going to impose as a county government any franchise fee for 25 years. That could be
No.
passed on to the customer.
no, that if, should we have any legislative language enabling us to impose a franchise
not do
fee,
it.
we would send it to the ballot first
Oh,
before
we would
any.
send it about. So what was about the 25 years?
Just because the contracts are 25 years.
Okay.
So
Sorry, what you're saying. So if I see what you're saying. But anyway, that's what we're doing as far as resolution and the new clause for the new contract, so,
So I like the clause, that's
yeah.
Okay,
the protection
Good.
clause.
Yep.
All right, that's cool.
And that's gonna be-
Eliminate the word
yes,
franchise fees,
yes.
and we should be good with that. You okay with that?
Oh, I don't know, because because like I said, it isn't, franchise fees are not precluded in, if you're going to say, we're going to do anything in safety and welfare of the public or public interest, and that's undefined, and could include franchise fees. And so if it isn't precluded, then it's included.
Right, that's why we're doing the resolution.
I understand.
Yeah, so they go hand in glove.
Are you okay? So?
Determine that day. When you vote, you'll know.
Maybe at the 50-yard line, you know, so, you know, that's the,
You'll need-
Right.
all right.
Chairman Antonori,
Yes, ma'am.
just to clarify on the referring to the ballot, would you refer that to the ballot of just the service area? Or,
There's a service area that's going to, so if you grant, let's just say a utility and they're providing electricity to, let's just say,
Say Douglas.
yeah, all of Douglas or all of Wilcox or whatever area, not just the city, but I mean, all, you know, the whole section of the county. That is where the franchise agreement covers that coverage area. Then if you impose a franchise fee, that is the consumer that is going to be impacted by that franchise fee. So they would be the ones that vote on it. It would not be a countywide. That would be a waste to go countywide. It would go by the precincts affected.
And this is just, it's all,
So with
In
that-
the future,
In the future,
if the
yeah.
legislature, right,
it's not saying that every franchise fee agreement goes, or franchise agreement.
No, just that there's a fee. It's only for fees. So if in the future the county board determines that they want to impose a franchise fee, they got to go to the ballot for the coverage area of that franchise agreement and get the voters to approve that franchise fee.
Right. So Joe proposed something. Supervisor Crosby, and I agree with this. In this sample combined clause, we could include a statement that says franchise fees will not be charged unless approved by voters through the election
There
process.
you go.
There you
Yeah,
go.
you go.
Okay.
That would be.
There you go.
Combined sample component.
Yes.
Earn your
So
paycheck
we're
today.
gonna have that proposed, and then we're gonna do the resolution also?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Very good.
Oh, that was
And
actually
that's-
kind of
That's
good.
usually the only types of fee.
Is Canadian
Not
football?
the video licensing.
Canadians got a 55 yard. Yes.
That's fine.
They got a 110-yard field.
So,
Utilities, yes.
anything else?
So,
It's not utility.
you never watched
It's
the
not
There's
utility.
a new
Yeah.
video licensing
There's a first
statute that covers this.
Yeah.
Okay.
He used
So
to
it's like
Yeah, that was
electrical
a,
smoke power.
Right.
Okay. Water.
All right, so I'm good. Are we good with this? Could we adjourn from the franchise meeting?
Yes.
All right, so the next meeting will be a budget work session at 10 o'clock to discuss the sheriff's department's budget. And that may include executive session, right? No?
No,
No? Oh, it should. Okay, cool. We're not talking security or anything like that
I don't think so.
or operation.
Let's
Okay,
get
all right.
started, go there.
All right, well then, let's adjourn and we'll see everybody at 10.